Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Vance. As usual, our call is Copy Vance. That's right. It's me, Vance here. And today we are doing it in a podcast style. Every Wednesday, 9 p.m. will be the streaming session that we'll be doing. But today we have a regular in-house guest speaker, Dr. Arvinder Singh HS. Hello, Dr. Arvinder.
Hi, Vance. How are you? We are back to online from meeting physically just a couple of days ago. So, yep, glad to.
Exactly. Yeah. But it was very interesting to catch up, isn't it? I mean, we were doing like for about 2 years and 6 months in virtual. Am I right to say that?
Yeah, we were all online, and then we met up physically. Now we're back online again, but I think it's going to be awesome again.
Yeah. So, but before we even dive into the topic, I mean, tell us about your experience in Singapore, especially the one that we went to East Coast in this coffee bin. We get our
Oh,
chai and.
yeah, that was an awesome experience. I thought I never saw that part of Singapore before. Near the beach side, I thought it was a fantastic thing, and I really enjoyed myself. Vance. I thought catching up physically. You always before the pandemic, you always take it for granted that you can meet a person physically. Then you meet people during the pandemic online, and then slowly, you make a lot of friends. Slowly, you meet them physically after the pandemic as we ease towards endemicity, and then suddenly you find that wow, this is what you actually took for granted for so long. So yeah,
Yeah.
that is something which is really amazing and
Yeah,
something
but
which
but
we have
but
taken for
uh,
granted.
but I got to agree with you also, like what you said, right? I mean, we never met, and we are meeting for the first time, and as if like we know for years. I mean, we know for years through virtual, but the experiences or the body reaction and the mind, adaptation is very strange, right? Like I know you very well, but virtually, and then we are meeting you for the first time, and we don't need any introduction, right?
That is the power of technology. It can make things so realistic that you are actually sitting or talking to the person next to you. And I think that the pandemic struck, if this pandemic would have gone, let's say about 30 40 years ago, or even when we dealt with a different pandemic called the smallpox, we can only imagine how people would have been confined to their homes and to
Mm,
their
that's
to
right.
their from their loved ones. But now, because of COVID-19, with technology, we still were able, yes, we couldn't be there physically, but we still kept in touch with a lot of people virtually. Families
Yeah.
were kept intact, friendships were kept intact. So I think, even though there are a lot of setbacks towards technology, but I think this is one of the things which, used correctly, it brings more good than harm.
Well said, Dr. Arvind. I mean, it was a great catch up with you and the little chat that we had at the East Coast together with your Papa G as well. It was an interesting
Yes,
chat to meet you for the first time. Thank you for
he
visiting
has he has
Singapore.
declared himself your biggest fan.
Yeah, oh, that's lovely. So he also must join in for Copy with Vance.
Yes. I'm very sure now, since we have, since the podcast has gone, on podcast on different modes. I think
That's
it'll be. I think not only him, but many other people, many of my followers will be catching up, and I think it'll be easier for them to listen to what we speak. And I think great times are ahead of us.
Totally agree with that. And also for viewers who are listening this, because right now we are from viewers, we are going to listeners right now because it's a podcast style. But we will be in both areas. So it means that we will be in Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as podcasts in Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. So viewers or listeners out there, please do share and like. Not really like, but you can give us your ratings in terms of stars of how we did, or if you have a particular comment, you can always write to us, which we will give it to you at the end of the session. But today's topic, it's always fascinating talking about the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, the feeling, the thoughts. Yes, we are talking about psychology, but we are narrowing it down to the topic of mind, your brain. So, Dr. Arvinda, I mean, yes, we agreed on this topic, but what it strikes you to come up with this topic and say, Vance, let's do podcast on this topic. I mean, and I said, let's do it immediately. And we jumped in, and within the past, 30 minutes, we are done here. Why
Yep.
is mind your brain?
Yeah. So when we look at it, let's look at different things that has happened in the past. You know, the old English saying "mind over matter." Why is it mind over matter? I mean, we have to think back. Why are certain English phrases like that? Why do they say a beautiful mind? There was a movie, I mean, many years ago. And if you look at all of this, there was actually a lot of substance to what people meant by mind over matter, a beautiful mind. The reason is, if you look, and even as science progresses today, neuroscience, any science to do with the brain, you find that the more we read and the more we understand, we realize that it is actually so little that we still know about the brain and the human mind. And it is so interesting to find out what we actually don't know. I will just share with you something very basic. um, if you study physiology in medicine, you will find that um, certain medications or certain drugs are used for different conditions. Like for example, the H1 receptor is actually for people with any sinus or allergies. H2
Right.
receptor is actually used for gastritis. That means for people with gastric conditions. The more
Okay.
interesting thing is, just recently, I would say maybe about 5 6 years ago, they discovered there is another H3 receptor which is a precursor for H1 and H2. That means they give rise to the working of the H1, which is your allergy receptor, and the
Mhm.
H2, which is your gastric receptor or gastritis
Right.
receptor, or the one that produces your acid. And the surprising thing is, this H3 receptor is actually situated in the brain. Meaning to
Mhm.
say, if you were to get an allergy reaction, okay,
Mhm.
it may be triggered from the brain. And if you get a gastric issue, or certain acid reflux and all that, it may also, I mean, I'm not saying it only can start from the brain, but it may also be linked to the brain. So what I'm trying to
Mm.
say is that in the past, whenever we study medicine and people say that you're allergic to something, it can be anything. But there is a small percentage of people who are actually allergic when they get stress. When they develop stress, they actually start
Yes.
developing a
Yes.
body rash and allergy. And there are some people, when they think so much or when they get so stressed up, they end up having gastritis. But nobody has ever wondered, why does this happen? Yes, there may be fluctuation of hormones, but what is the actual connection? And they actually believe that this H3 receptor is there. So that is what is fascinating us. And I will share with you a couple of stories, medical
Okay.
marvels. I won't say treatment, but medical
Yeah.
marvels that has happened in the past that actually
Yeah.
help people to relieve their symptoms. So I think it is something so much that we have not explored, but yet there's so much to talk about.
Okay. Okay. So we totally have to agree with that. Brain and hormones and chemicals are always fluctuating with us. That's why sometimes we have a good mood, bad mood. External forces as affected us. Situation has made us angry, happy. But apart from this, doc, I mean, we are going into the medical first, right?
Mhm.
Can it be used as a placebo? So let's say if my child say, "Oh, daddy, I'm feeling stomach ache," then probably I just want to give. I mean, of course, as the kid grown up, they know that you're cheating. Probably you give them a sweet and say, "Oh, you take this, you'll be fine." Or to someone who says, "Oh, you drink this, you'll be good." Is that also plays because what you believe and what you manifest and what you're adjusting, like what you said, your neurons, your nerves, your power within you. Can placebo also plays a part of it?
So first, I think we have to define what a placebo is. A
Yeah.
placebo, in it can be many terms. Most of the time, it is something which looks or acts like the real medication, but there is no active substance. Meaning to say, there
Right.
is nothing that helps with medically. So just to share with you, many years ago in Malaysia, there was an
Okay.
issue that there was some medications being brought from other countries, other countries, that had no approval, and one of them was paracetamol, which is what we normally use for headaches.
Oh,
So
okay.
there was this particular drug that came. When I say drug, I'm talking here as medication. So in medicine, we know drug medication as drugs. So when they said this drug actually came in, they said that it was paracetamol, the content, but actually it was just made out of hardened flour. As you know, most of the paracetamols are white color. So when they say it was hardened flour, it was compressed, it was made into the shape of a
Yeah.
paracetamol, and it was sold. And a lot of people who consumed it, normally when you take paracetamol, it's bitter, but they did not
Right.
taste anything of that sort. But people who
Mm.
didn't know consumed, and there were some people who actually said that my headaches were actually cured by it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that if you're having a headache, go and take a paracetamol. You must, of course,
Yeah.
get examined by a doctor. But what I'm trying
Right.
to say is that there was a placebo effect there because they thought that they were taking paracetamol, but actually, what was
Mhm.
going in was flour. Now, you and I know that flour will only cause you to put on weight, not
Yeah.
uh, not cure a headache. But
Right. Okay.
why did it happen? So it was the placebo effect, and that is where we all learn a lot about placebo effect. Now, you cannot say that placebo effects will work for treatment of, like for example, diabetes or even
Okay.
cancer treatment,
All right. Right.
because
Yeah.
that there is a physiological explanation. But for very
Okay.
abstract things, headaches, and a lot of other things, some people, and in certain different countries and certain different studies, which is now unethical, of course, to be done.
Right.
So you should never do
Mhm.
it. But in the past, when they never knew about it, they actually found that there was a placebo effect. So it's
Right.
very interesting to see that how the mind functions when they think that it has received something. And it very funny events, just to share with
Yep.
you. I don't know, since you're a fitness person, I don't know whether you have seen that people who abstain from taking carbohydrates or sugar, for
Ah.
example, they abstain,
Yes.
abstain, abstain. They are okay,
Yep.
the first few days they have a problem, but
Yep.
after that they're okay. But when they
Yes.
get that one small binge of, let's say, a sweet or and all that, it
That's
becomes
it.
like a craving.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you heard of that?
Doc, I think this really works because, someone who go on a crash diet, I don't
Yeah.
want to do this. I don't, and also nowadays, Google doctor, people are just
Hmm.
going to the Google and just getting their treatments or
Diagnose.
remedies,
Mm.
diagnosed as
Yep.
well. But, like what you said is true. So it is something to do with the mind as well. You go on a 30 days, no carbohydrates and zero sugar,
Yep.
and you're going under enormous strain in your body. And then suddenly someone gives you something a little and then you go crazy about it,
Right. So
right? So
yeah.
yes, I've said that before.
So there is something called which sorry, there's something which is called prebiotics. Have you heard of prebiotics?
Yes, I did. Yep.
They got probiotics and they got prebiotics. Now it is
Prebiotic.
said
Yep.
that the reason why the craving happens is because there is this, when you, well, the first few days when you don't take any sugar or carbohydrates, these particular organisms in your gut actually die off. Now I'm just talking hypothetically, these are
Okay.
hypotheses
Yep.
which has been formed, so there's no
Right.
theory behind it, but it makes sense. So these bacteria die off. Now the moment you consume something which is sweet or with full of carbohydrates,
Yep.
what happens is these bacteria start to form again. And what it actually happens is it sends a signal to the brain, causing the brain to crave even more for that particular substance, because it has to
Okay.
send the craving so that it is essential for its survival. Because
Hmm.
only if a person takes sugar and carbohydrates will it survive.
Yep.
So it's a sending out a signal to tell the brain to consume more, to consume more, to consume more. So what people are doing these days is they are taking something which is called prebiotics. Now these prebiotics go and they fight off these organisms so that the cravings actually reduce. But I mean, that story and that theory aside, it actually goes to show that even microorganisms are
Mm-hmm.
actually using different chemicals to stimulate the brain to actually to survive or to continue
Okay.
its survival within the body. And I
Yeah.
believe that is the first form of Bluetooth that has ever formed in this world, even before
Oh,
Bluetooth was.
yeah.
Yeah.
That I like that the Bluetooth part. But doctor,
Yeah,
when you talk about prebiotics, but prebiotics also shown to improve stool frequency and consistency. So which means that
correct.
it makes you poop, right? Is it right
Yes.
because of the content in there?
Not it makes you poop. What happens is it actually deprives a certain amount of organisms from what you call colonizing
Okay.
your colon. So the first few
Okay.
times it actually makes you pass out. Some people get diarrhea from that, and then later, once the colony of the good bacteria is there, it actually creates a good gut health. But I always tell people that this is only a theory base. We have not proven it. Like, there are so many things, like, they have got in the past that H. pylori may cause gastric cancer, but
Hmm.
nobody has proven it. Then somebody actually took the pain to actually go through the entire process and prove it. Now we know that anybody with H. pylori, there is a risk to develop cancer if they don't get it treated. So because of that, gastric cancers have reduced, because when they do a scope, they find that the H. pylori is there. Pop. That
Hmm.
means this person has a risk of getting gastric cancer. Now, this prebiotics is actually a theory. A theory. Now, it is the theory of what may actually happen. But it is amazing that all these new theories which are coming up are actually so controlled with the mind. So, mind over matter, and even mind your brain. If a person doesn't look after their mental health, doesn't look after their brain health, they don't
Yeah.
think correctly, they don't think healthily, it is going to
Yeah.
eventually affect them. If you look at if you look at many documentaries, when they talk about people who have committed a crime, when you look
Hmm.
at them, they don't look
Hmm.
normal. They always look, you when you look at them, you know that there's some issue happening. I'm not saying that they may be a bad person straight away,
Hmm.
but it reflects on how their mental status is. So that is why, people say, oh, have a bath, keep good hygiene, because it makes a difference. It may not make a difference I mean, hygienically. It may make a difference not only hygienically, but also suddenly you find that you're mentally also I mean, refreshed in a way. That
Right.
is why sleep is absolutely important. If I may, I will just share with you. um, you know, uh, there was this one particular soldier. I watched this medical documentary some time ago. There was this one
Okay.
soldier who actually lost his forearm. That means from
Hmm.
his elbow downwards, up to his fingers. He lost it during a war, during an explosion. All right.
Right.
And what happened is he got something which is very rare, which happens is called a phantom limb. Now, what is a phantom limb? Meaning to say, the arm is that part of the forearm is already amputated, but
Okay.
he still experiences pain in the amputated part. That means, let's say he has no fingers already, right? But
Hmm.
after the amputation, he still feels as if he's having pain in his fingers,
Wow.
even though that part is already amputated. Now, this is called a phantom limb. It's because the brain still feels that the limb is still there. And what happened
Uh,
was, I remember distinctively that he had a pain as if that he was actually gripping his fist so
okay.
tightly that he felt that his bones were going to crush. That's how tight
Wow.
I mean, the sensation was.
The feeling. Yeah.
He
The
went
feeling.
for multiple sessions, multiple therapies,
Hmm.
brain therapy, speech therapy, behavioral therapy. They put him on all sorts of medication, but nothing worked. Huh? So
Uh,
finally, there was this one particular doctor who was studying this particular thing about where some people, where they lose their limbs,
okay.
their brain has to see that they still have that limb to
Hmm.
actually counter things like phantom limb. So what he did was, so this guy, I still remember, didn't have his left forearm and fingers, and he still had his right arm. So what he did
Mm.
was, they sat him down, and they put a mirror between his left and right arm, or supposedly where his left arm would be and his right arm. They made him
Okay.
put his right hand there, and in the mirror he saw a reflection which looked like his left hand. What they
Wow.
did was, they told him, you squeeze your right hand as hard as possible and then put
Okay.
it beside the mirror.
Okay.
He squeezed his right hand so hard and he put it beside the mirror. When he looked in the mirror, it reflected as how pain his left arm was because it was being squeezed, right? And the doctor just
Mm-hmm.
told him, release your right hand. When he released his right hand, he looked in the mirror and his left hand was also relieved. Immediately, his pain of the crushing pain of his left arm, of his left hand,
Wow.
for the first time in multiple years,
Mhm.
just relieved immediately without medication. So
Wow.
the theory behind all of it is that it is the mind has controlled so much even for your pain nerves and all that, that
Mhm.
it actually can it actually it the brain actually feels that it is still there, but if you can actually adjust to a new environment, like what this doctor did to say that, okay, I'll just mimic a left arm and just make him release it.
Yeah,
And when
yeah.
he did that, and the brain actually saw, because physically it actually saw, hey, that's my left hand and I'm going to release it. And when he
Right.
released it,
Right.
that was the end of it. And he was pain free until until the time of the documentary was made and it was done. So I thought it was
Wow.
amazing thing which happened here.
Definitely, I think, doctor, I think it's very phenomenal that that how the brain is. But as we go in a little bit more deeper and deeper into that, we also want to look at how can we focus our brain, because there's no one answer for how to improve focus, but the following can help, right? Which I was thinking, like reduce multitasking, practicing mindfulness and meditation. Just now I heard from you, you said that sleep is very important as well. That is where your cells are being repaired, and of course we will go into that sleep. So we should be daydreaming a while, a little more than we should, because
Mm.
we say to someone, hey, don't sleep in the afternoon, don't be lazy, don't daydream. But in fact, daydreaming and sleeping is definitely best for our brain, our body, and our muscles and cell, isn't it there, right, doc?
Yeah. The reason why a lot of people nap in the afternoon, which may be unhealthy,
Yeah.
is because they have a heavy lunch, their glycemic index goes up, and that actually
Ah,
causes the brain to actually be slow down. So that is what they mean. But we are
okay.
talking about having proper sleep in the night when you're supposed to sleep. That is why people say
Mhm.
don't have a heavy meal at night and sleep, because you're actually mimicking what happens in the afternoon. So what you need to do is have a proper meal, have some proper exercise, and then sleep. So when you actually sleep, what actually happens is your mind is actually resting properly, and of course your body is undergoing a reset to be prepared for
Okay.
the next particular day.
Right.
And I think it's so important, because if our listeners just want to know how powerful the mind is, if you felt that that phantom limb hand did not
Yeah.
work off it, what you can actually think of is, if you actually watch or you actually see certain movies that actually have people with schizophrenia. Now, no
Yeah.
disrespect meant to people with schizophrenia and all that, but the schizophrenia is a type of condition where people actually imagine that there are
Yeah.
certain people who don't exist, who can talk, who can touch, and they can feel them, but they actually don't
All right.
exist. So a lot of times people confuse this with paranormal activities. Now, so
Right.
a lot
Right.
of people, they may see, if you watch a couple of movies, and one I could think of is very very long time ago. There's this movie called A Beautiful Mind, where the actor actually was imagining this particular person who he deemed was his friend, who gave him advice, but only gave him advice to information which he knew about. And that is
Okay.
how the mind kept playing about it. And he could,
Mhm.
and when the doctor actually diagnosed and said, you are having schizophrenia, you are having a schizophrenia where you can actually hear, touch the person, he said, no, I can feel him, I have held his hand and walked. The doctor said, no, it is so much so that your brain is feeling that it is holding that person's hand, but it is not. So that is how powerful the mind actually is. So if in all this power, and you must imagine that your mind is not only controlling your thoughts, it is controlling a lot of other processes that is happening
Mhm.
from your body, from your heart rate. I mean, of course, the heart, of course, it being an organ which can function on its own, but it is
Yeah.
sending messages, because when you're scared, your heart starts beating very fast. When you're
Yeah.
calm, your heart rate goes down. There is all
Come down.
chemical hormones. Yeah, that's all
Right.
hormones which are actually dealing with that, which is your catecholamines, so your fight or flight mechanisms. And then at the same time, it's also doing your peristalsis, also keeping in check, and also telling your body that, okay, you know what, your bladder is full. Even when you're
Yeah.
sleeping, your bladder is being kept in check, and your body is telling, hey, wake up, you need to go to the toilet and
True. True.
pass out your urine.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
these are things that happen. So you must keep your brain, and your brain needs time to rest. Imagine that if we make you work non-stop, even if you're on a computer for more than 24 hours, it starts to heat up and it starts to slow down. What more
Yeah.
our brain? So
Wow.
that is
Wow.
why it's always important to get enough rest, and to make sure that
Yeah.
you take care of your brain, eating right, eating correct material. I know of certain customs, especially in our Indian culture, they
Yeah.
actually link certain type of nuts to actually brain function. But if you look at it, it is actually the content of these nuts that has
Hmm.
actually effect. In fact, these days you find a lot of people with dementia, doctors,
Yeah. Yeah.
psychiatrists are prescribing things like certain types of oils, certain types of food to actually help the
Mhm.
dementia, which there is enough evidence these days to help. So yeah.
I mean, I think, I mean, it really makes sense to as we are in this topic right now. I mean, the brain has the ability to learn and grow as we age, right? And also the
Mm,
brain, also the plasticity, right? We call it plasticity. It's also is
mm,
what on a regular basis. So we need to train, and that's why they say, when your mind is when you're idling, it's a devil's playground. So you must constantly
correct.
feed it. And what is the link? As someone retires, lack of activities or lack of what they have done in the younger days, going to the university studies, playing sports actively, or even or having sex like 7 times a week, when everything
Mm,
slows down as they age. Is it also the dementia comes in, Alzheimer, a lot of other mental issues
right.
comes in? Is it to be one of the issues here?
So yeah, so
Alzheimer.
before we carry on, you actually
Yeah.
mentioned something. The brain has the ability to learn, but if you
Yeah.
look at it, actually, the brain has the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. That is the
Okay.
21st century thing. A person has to
Hmm.
learn, unlearn, and relearn, because the process becomes different. I'll give you a very simple example. If I give you a handphone of a certain brand, you learn. Tomorrow,
Yeah.
that handphone gets spoiled or goes kaput. You go and get another different brand of handphone. uh, Even though the basic function is to make a call, but the way the process runs, it will be different.
Right.
So you have to learn, unlearn, and relearn, which goes to the fact of what you were mentioning. As people
Yeah.
age, why does dementia kick in? Actually, it may be due to a lot of things, like, for example, diabetes. People who have diabetes, who have uncontrolled diabetes, their risk of getting dementia is actually much higher. So that is where actually your because, as you know, diabetes is an endocrine disorder. And what happens is your hormones, everything goes out of control. I mean, in crudely speaking, and of course, the sugars go up and down as well, and that really affects the mindset. But what actually happens, what I really like what you mentioned was, after people retire, why do they
Mhm.
appear that they have aged? It's
Yeah.
because when a person actually has to function day to day basis, on a day to day
Okay.
basis, you find that their mind is keep on actively working, even though they
Mhm.
may not be physically working. But as a person who is a senior or a senior consultant, people will still come with a problem where he actually, or or she has to actually
Mhm.
think of how to solve the problem. So the mind is still functioning. Now, once a person retires, and if they become idle, they don't do anything, what happens is the brain function starts to deteriorate. That is why you find even the great Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, even at the age
Yeah.
of 90, he was still very sharp, because he
Yeah.
kept giving speeches, he kept giving interviews, he kept reading, he kept learning,
Yeah.
he kept unlearning and relearning. That is
Yeah.
where the key power is. And in fact, a lot of my patients who come with dementia, you know what is one of the things I tell them to do, which our viewers are more than welcome to actually
Yeah.
try? It is a non medical therapy. I always tell them to play Sudoku. So Sudoku, the
Ah.
reason is you have to crack your brain and find out, hey, I have to get this line in number and that line in number. The process of just happening not only
Yeah.
sharpens your mind, it also plays a role with your memory. And it really helps. And it has a hand
Mhm.
motor coordinational skills with the
Yeah.
visual coordinational skills. And there is also a mental component in that. That just
Mm.
goes to show that how much your mind needs to be trained. It's like an
Yeah.
athlete. If the athlete goes and runs every day 20 kilometers and it does it for a very, very long time, maybe slowly, sooner or later, it can't do 20 kilometers, or the person can't do 20 kilometers. They go 15 and then 10. But if they stop
Fair enough.
running, yeah,
Yeah.
and in a couple of weeks, you tell them, hey, you know what, let's start running 20 kilometers again. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. So that
Right.
is why you need to keep doing. That is why we always encourage people of elderly groups to
Hmm.
go and join in social activities among their old peers, among their elderly geriatric peers,
How
to
about
talk to them. Yeah.
dance, Arvinda? What do you think about dance?
Of course, dance at a certain age may be dangerous because they may
Yeah.
try certain maneuvers which can actually injure them, and
Okay.
they're high risk of falls. But
Okay.
the most important thing I always recommend is swimming, because swimming, there is a hand-leg
Yes.
coordination skill. There is a certain
Correct.
movement when you do certain, like for example, when you swim and you do freestyle, there is a certain movement of your head from the center towards the left, so that you can actually, your mouth goes up to the
Mm.
right to actually get oxygen. And there is a certain coordination, hand coordination skills, now that is also very useful. Of course,
Right.
dance, I think, done in a safe environment, because there's also hand motor coordination skills, is
Yeah.
also
Cognitive.
very
Yeah.
important. Yeah, the cognitive
Yeah.
skills as in thinking, which is very
Okay.
important, but coordinating skills is very important. So that actually keeps, and you must understand, the brain is so complex. There are certain places where it's used for emotion, certain
Yeah.
places where it's used for sensation, certain places where it is used for motor function, certain places where it is used for thinking ability and critical thinking ability. So
Right.
all these areas need stimulation. So the activity which you do, you want to find an activity which can actually stimulate all the different areas of the mind that actually keeps your
Yeah.
brain active. That is why I remember watching a documentary that the late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew used to swim every night. I think
Yeah.
before he went to
Actually,
sleep. Did you see that?
yeah. Yeah. He
Yeah.
does a
So
couple of things, right? He walks, he runs, he cycles, he swims. You
exactly.
know.
And you see, yeah, so cycling and even walking and even that, all of this, there is no monotonity to it. So that means there are different activities, so they don't get bored. And then when you swim and then when you walk, they are all different hand coordination skills which actually keep. That's why he was very sharp until the day, sadly, where he passed on. But
Yeah.
he was actually very, very fit and active until then. And I sincerely hope that if people can look and aspire to what he has done for physical and mental health, I'm sure that they are actually going to go into their 80s and 90s living a very happy and comfortable life.
Nice. So the expiry is even more longer, maybe another 10 or 20 more years, adding on to it
Yes,
just by doing these little things, right?
yeah, because remember, we always see a lot of people that they start deteriorating after they lose a spouse, and we also remember that the late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew lost his spouse, and then that's where I think after a few months he passed on, and that is actually very that's also another very crucial thing, because if you keep doing these activities with this one particular person and they
Yeah.
pass on or they stop, that is why it's important to have a proper group where they encourage each other. But unfortunately sometimes that is just not possible.
True.
But what I can say is, but if you look at the late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, when he and his wife were both there, they were all very
Yeah.
active, because I think they used to do activities together and all. So I mean, of
Yeah.
course, being married for so long. So yeah, so I think that is something that is more interesting to have a partner to actually do these exercises or even physical activities with, because if you don't feel like going, the person will say, hey, come on lah, yesterday you did, come on, let's go today. There's a pull factor there, and that's what
Exactly.
actually keeps people going.
More
Yeah.
supportive, it's more like a supportive. But of course, having said that, I mean, a great credit that you've given to the late LKY.
Mm.
I mean, his wife was actually the pillar for him, right? I mean, they went through a lot of things from where he shouldn't be to where it is right now. I mean, thanks to him as well. And
Yes.
I mean, we wish all the best. But doctor, I mean, we are coming back to the Alzheimer disease because we are still talking about the brain, I mean, mind your brain. I mean, we call it the brain power as well. But Alzheimer's
Mhm.
disease is also the most common type of a dementia, right? That's what we talked about it. And it's very progressive disease, beginning with maybe a mild memory loss, possibility leading to loss of ability to carry on a conversation and even to respond to an environment or to the loved ones. It also involves part of the brain that control through memory and languages. But what is amazing part is that, doc, we have to understand here. Maybe the person who's suffering from Alzheimer disease could be a very successful accountant or maybe a successful CEO who make major decisions, is sharp thinking, laser focused. But that what he was doing for the past 60, 70 years. But when he reaches to 70, 75, everything just turns against him. And then in the past where he make decisions for the company, make decisions for the family, and suddenly he can't do something and he's becoming forgetful, that could also irritates him, so they become very edgy, angry, emotional. So that's a big roller coaster of emotion. We just talked about it as well, right now?
Yes. So most of the time, actually, it does not irritate them because they don't remember. They get irritated when somebody around, especially their caregivers, when, like, for
Yeah.
example, a lot of them, they forget that they have taken their meals. So they say, hey,
Ah,
they come about and they said, hey, why hasn't anybody given me my food? I'm hungry. But somebody will just
yeah.
say, sorry, mom, dad, or grandpa, grandma, you just had your meal 5 minutes ago. Don't you remember?
Right.
No, you have not given me food. So there
Correct.
are two
Correct.
things that there are two ways of which suffering can happen. One is the caregivers who are looking and feeling that why is that person reacting that way, or
Right.
why is the person behaving this way. The other thing is
Yeah.
the other person is frustrated because the mind is so powerful. If you see,
Yep.
if you had just eaten, your
Yep.
stomach will actually be full, but the
Yep.
brain can
Right.
actually confuse the person in such a way that it can still make it tell that it is still they are still hungry.
Oh, okay,
So
dog. So,
then, yeah.
what's going to happen here? Okay, I'm just going to ask you this, right? So, a person who's having Alzheimer disease and a dementia, and it's telling the caregiver, "Oh, you never given," but then he had a big full of biryani, example, right? Probably the
Mhm,
whole meal he finished it, but then he says that he doesn't have it, all right? And I'm hungry and I
mhm.
want to eat. So, what happens if you serve another plate of biryani? Will he be able to finish it?
So
Because
they will
now the
take three,
body
four.
and mind, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So now the body and mind. So the mind says, no, I haven't eaten it. But then the body
Yeah.
digestive system says, I'm full. So will he be able to finish it? Will he go into a
No.
confusion state?
That is the amazing part of it. The body still tells the brain that it's still
Yeah.
hungry, but they eat two
Okay.
or three bites and then they say, you know what, I'm already full, because they just had a big meal before that. It's always like
Yeah.
that when you may be really thirsty after a run and you say, you know what, I'm going to have two big bottles of water, and I'm going to
Okay.
follow it by a biryani meal. You finish that two bottles of water and you say, okay lah, now the biryani is here. You cannot two three spoons of that, but the water effect starts to kick in, and your dehydration and your body actually says that it's already full. You can't eat,
Yeah.
even though you have
Right.
actually so hungry, you have already filled up yourself. So I think the mechanism of that is happening, and then, which is very interesting, which we have brought it up. A lot
Yeah.
of people, they say that, I eat, then suddenly I feel so full, oh, yo, like so bloated. Why suddenly I feel like that? Why don't I feel it in stages? Actually, the brain and the stomach, actually, I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's a 20 to 30 minute delay. So if the stomach
Yeah.
is full, it takes 20 to 30 minutes to tell the brain, hey, you know what, the tank is full, just cut it out now. But if you keep eating, saying that I'm not full yet, I'm not full yet, I'm not full yet, and you
Hmm.
stop when you are feeling full, you have already
Hmm.
probably overeaten. So that is
Right.
the
Right.
trick that we always tell our patients who are actually undergoing weight loss, that you
Hmm.
must quantify how much you can eat. That means if you know that I eat one plate of rice and then I end up feeling bloated, that means once
Hmm.
you reach half plate, you may want to wait between 10 to 15 minutes to identify if you're really full or you're still hungry. So if you're
Wow.
still hungry, then maybe you can continue. But if you're not, that means you're already full.
So
So
how
that is
fast?
another.
I mean, how amazing the brain is, dog. So many
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
We are processing. We remember things that we, like 30 years back, 40 years. The memory is so beautiful, and then suddenly when you come to a certain age, right? I mean, that is something that is not planned for. 75, he's laughing and working and exercising very actively. On the 76, that's it. Something kicks in. So, what is the link? Why a matter of 6 months, a person is very active. What exactly is happening in the human body? I mean, of course, it's a $1 trillion question, but
Yeah.
constantly it's changing, right? So many things working for us, some things are working against us, antibodies are working, so much of synchronization is happening, and yet we know very little of the body. I mean, as a medical doctor, I know you have studied many years and still studying. People are studying into specializations. What exactly is our body wants or our brain wants?
You see, the thing is, it may be due to a particular event. Like some people at the age of 70 plus, then they end up getting diabetes. So, because of the
Yeah,
sugar fluctuation up and down, that may cause. It may also be an environmental factor, maybe the loss of a loved one, or that
yeah,
person stops working and decides. I know a lot of medical doctors whom at the age of 50 or 60 said, you know what, I am just going to sell off my practice, or I'm just going to stop working. I've had enough, because
retire.
yeah, it takes a toll out of you. But a lot of people whom I have seen and I have met, my parents colleagues, who actually said that after the age of 65 or so, I'm just going to stop, I'm just going to take it easy. But
Mm-hmm.
they only maybe do that for about 2 months, and then they start regretting why did they do that. They find that they have deteriorated so much, their brain is not working, and the normal thing they always say, I really feel like my brain is rotting because there is no more activity. They don't have that computational, the critical skills thinking. It is different when a person retires. They retire from a job, but they start doing something else.
Yeah.
They keep themselves occupied doing something else, which is not only physical but also something which they can compute with their brain.
Mhm.
And once they keep doing that, you find that these people are okay. But the people who just sit down and do nothing, that is what they're talking about. An empty mind is a devil's workshop. You start
Yeah.
thinking about all the other sort of things. You can't spend your energy there. Then you start um, creating issues because your mind leads from one thing to another, making a person think about certain things, about certain events which are not probably true, that actually causes problems, or they just don't know what to think about. So they can actually bring a fantasy into reality. That means they are looking at something on TV, that a particular event has happened of such nature. Then they start thinking about it, and they also feel that it is happening in their life. It becomes a superimposition print. There are also people who just want to stop doing things. You see, Vance, very simple example I can give our viewers or our listeners. When you go for a holiday, you always say, you know
Yeah.
what, okay, lah, I'm going to go on next 2 weeks. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to go relax. But, bro, after you're on day 5 or day 6 of the holiday, you actually feel like, oh my god, I can't be doing this for any longer, because I feel that okay, I've rested, like I've paid my dues, I've done my rest. I think it's time to go back to work, because not only are you
Mm.
worried about your backlog, but you
Yeah.
find that there is some disturbances within the system itself. I'm not talking about your brain, it can be anything. There's just some
Yeah.
disturbances in the system. And then
Mm.
you find for the first few days, oh gosh, it's so difficult to work, because the first few days you have just come back from holiday, you're used to getting up late, you're
Right.
doing this,
Right.
you're doing that, and then you find that, oh, but when you find about after a couple of days, you find that the rail the wheels are back on track, and they're just moving as if nothing had happened. But
Can I
when
can
this
I
becomes
can I
sure.
relate this to maybe a character or the attitude or some sort of the person's modus operandi or even the matter of their SOP. I need to do this. I need to do that. And then when a certain age comes in, when you are asked to be retired from his company or for that individual, and then suddenly with full of things to be done in a day, and then you become so free, and then like what you said, the chances. So does it mean that we shouldn't be resting at all? There's no retirement for us,
Oh,
because the moment you retire, you are screwing our own brains. Can I say that,
I
or do you think
I
it's not?
think no. I think that when a person is retired, you are actually relieving them from their duties. You are not
Right.
relieving them from their work. You're relieving them from their duties. For example, if you're a banker who deals with people's money, you are actually relieving them of their duties. You don't want them to be held liable for
Yeah.
any potential mistake that can happen. But that
Right.
doesn't mean that that person should not be doing work which is related to them. They may be, let's say, for example, they may go to their religious place of worship. They can go to the
All
temple,
right.
they can go to the mosque, they can go to
Okay.
the Gurdwara, they can go to their synagogue, they can go to any of place of worship and say, I'm a retired accountant or a retired banker. I know how to
Yeah.
deal accounts. Would it be okay if I help your particular
Ah,
organization
so
to help
volunteer.
relate account? Yeah,
Volunteer.
volunteer. So basically, you're not. I mean, of course, there is some responsibility there. People may question, okay, why did this go here and why did this go there? But you are
Hmm.
actually not held liable like what you do for multinational corporations. So
Right.
it is good that they continue offering their services. There are some of them I have noticed after they retire, what
Yeah.
they do is they decide to go to the universities and teach their skills to
Right.
other younger people so that their skill and knowledge are actually passed down to the next generation, which also helps because they relive, oh, okay, or when they see a problem, oh, this is what happened. I've seen a particular, or I'm relating medically. I have
Hmm.
lecturers who were 60, 70 years old who said, oh, I saw
Hmm.
a patient which was like that, who came in. We did not have XYZ equipment. So we decided to do this because if you think about it medically, the physiological or the pathological thing happens this way. So we do this to
Hmm.
actually encounter that, which people say, "Hmm, yeah, actually makes sense." So not only is that person training their memory, they are also
Hmm.
reusing their skills, maybe in a lesser way, but they are also imparting knowledge. And the feel good factor is there, which is the something which is very important. Some people when they eat ice cream and they eat chocolate, they say, wow, I feel
Yeah.
so happy when they do that. It's because of the release of endorphins. Now the thing is, it's because a lot of people like ice cream and a lot of people like chocolates, but some people really like listening to music. Why do they listen to music and they become so happy? Because it releases the endorphins within them. So I think
Right.
at the end of the day, if you're talking about hormone regulation and all, it is to find what actually makes you happy. That is why people say, do what makes you happy, because that is your feel good factor that releases your endorphins.
Doctor, one thing I learned from today's topic, right? Even if I'm going to retire, I'm going to do tons of things, play guitar, go to Gurudwara, go to temple, go and travel, play Sudoku, like what we talk about, even
Right.
having some copy and having a chat, that is why the copy events has started up. It's already planning for the retirement. Anybody who wants to talk, they are welcome to come in and talk and with a lot of great views, isn't it, now?
Yep. So also that is one. The
Yeah,
other thing is not only preparing for retirement. That is why you find there are a lot of people who actually have started blogging, a lot of people who have started podcasts, a lot of
yeah,
people who have started different sessions which they can actually talk and think about so that they can still interact with other people. And this is how you actually make technology your friend. You don't be ruled by technology. There's some people every 5 minutes they have to look at their social media profiles.
oh
That
yeah,
is actually social media actually controlling them. But if you use social media to connect with your friends, to see how everything is with a moderation, you actually
yeah.
find that it becomes a useful tool. So I think you have to make the tool useful for you instead of you becoming a tool to be used by that particular product.
Yeah, so I like to make a quote here. So anything too much is a poison. Even if it's going to
Yep.
drink milk, you're going to drink liters and liters. Maybe imagine someone drinks like 7 liters or 8 liters or 10 liters of milk. That's it, right? Something will going to happen somewhere. So same
Yeah.
thing. Anything we do must do in moderation. Dr. Arvinder, it's a fantastic pass. Wow, almost 50 minutes of discussion on the topic of mind your brain, but we think we know a lot, but we both will agree that we are just trying to coming to understanding about how the brain works. If I remember very clearly, almost about 6 months back, I was speaking to a psychiatrist, and he was telling me that they are still learning. So there's we have not come yet, we have not reached to the end yet, probably it's just the beginning. But just
Yep.
how fascinating our human body is, just to understand, like what you mentioned, the endocrine system, the cardio, your liver, your pancreas, so many things, your lungs, everything is working for us. How beautiful this piece of equipment or piece of body was made. I think whoever made it, it's an amazing job that a particular person had made it. I got to say this and give the credit.
Yep. And also, you must understand that a lot of people who say that they are mind over matter. There are so many things, and just to share with you, now latest theories say that Einstein only used one third of his brain. So that is how much we
Wow.
still don't know about our
Yeah.
brains. What were the other two-thirds function being used for? Of course, it may be used for other processes which you can't control, like your heart rate and your
Yeah.
peristalsis, all of that. But nevertheless, the capacity of the mind, I think, is something which is yet to be explored fully. That is why you find a lot of research being done in neuroscience.
Yeah.
While I was in Singapore, I also visited the NUS and Duke University. You find that there
Right.
are a lot of things being done for neuroscience, a lot of research, a lot of effort being put to understand the
Yeah.
mind better, especially the science of of the brain. But I think the fascinating thing is, as we go to the future, we are going to understand more and more, which is going to help us make things even much better. And who knows, within the couple of years time, you may actually find that a certain center of the brain is actually responsible for dementia, and there are certain things which you have to do,
Wow.
maybe not even
Yeah.
take medication, but like what I was telling you, do sudoku or something like that, which can
Yeah.
actually
Yeah. Yeah.
train your mind. Yeah, so you
Nice.
never know. So the future holds is very exciting, and it's very interesting times to come.
Well said, Dr. Arvinder. It was a great discussion we had it on the topic of mind your brain at Copy Events podcast. Will be loaded in Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as it will be also be in our social media platform, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube as well. So our viewers and listeners, you can please do share and like, and do inform your friends and families as well, so that more can be aware of this platform. At the same time, gets a lot of information with our guest speaker, Dr. Arvinder Singh. Thank you so much, sir, for the past 15 minutes of discussion, bro. I think
Thank
the
you.
next time when you're going to come to Singapore, we're going to have a nice biryani, a nice vade. Let's
Yeah.
do some South Indian. Let's do some
and
South
and
Indian food.
and we must also do a live podcast show that time. And I
Yes,
think it's
yes.
also interesting if our viewers can actually share
Yeah,
what would they want, what do they want to discuss, or what are the topics which they feel needs addressing, where
yeah.
it may give us rise to something which we can
Mhm.
talk about in the future.
Perfectly said, Doctor. I mean, it was a great pleasure for you to come to Singapore. We have finally met over a period of 2.5 years over the virtual. But it was an amazing feel, right? I mean, I didn't feel that I was with a stranger, even though we are meeting for
Yeah,
the first time. But this is
agreed.
how
Agreed.
virtual or the technology has connected very well during the pandemic.
That's right. Agreed.
Thank you, doctor, and we will connect again very soon on on another interesting topic at Copy Events.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
doctor.
Stay safe. Stay safe. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
So that was the a very nice topic to talk about at almost going to be a new day, but we are still at Tuesday. Of course, with Dr. Arvinder, a guest speaker at Copy Events on the topic of mind your brain. Thank you for all the listeners tuning in to Spotify as well as Apple Podcasts. Please do give your ratings. In the same time, do follow our topics, and if you do have any particular topic that you want to talk about, you can actually follow the website that is mentioned at the Copy Events Spotify and Apple podcast. You can send a message there, and we will come up with a very possible topic that you have requested for. So thank you so much, and I'm going to sign off right now. This is Vance from Copy with Vance. Have a pleasant evening, everyone, and we will catch soon on our next episode at Copy